it's only now being marketed. In other words, they're trying to sell it. But they started, in my view, at quite the wrong end. They didn't say what sort of supersonic aircraft would the airlines want in the middle 1970s. They didn't even ask whether they would want one at all. They just thought the airlines ought to have one. And therefore it was never a commercially conceived project from the beginning.
Now, those of you who've been coming to press conferences of BOAC over the last 4 or 5 years know that BOAC's constant view has been that we want to go supersonic, just as soon as possible.
6 days ago in London, the first of the world's major airlines declared their intention of buying Concorde. BOAC held options on 8 aircraft. They decided to confirm the purchase of 5. Each Concorde cost BOAC about £18 million, 2.5 times the price of a jumbo jet.
I'm very, very happy indeed to tell you that BOAC has now entered into a formal commitment to buy 5 Concordes. It gives me particular pleasure here to see our good friends from BAC, because I want to congratulate them and their colleagues on the brilliant technological success of the teams at BAC, at Aerospatiale and at Rolls-Royce.
Months of hard bargaining between the government, the manufacturers and the airline had gone into persuading BOAC to announce the order. It would be a good send-off to the sales tour. For the manufacturers, BAC, it was a moment of fulfilment and relief. Their chairman was asked, would he have been happier if the airline had bought all the 8 planes they had options on, not just 5?
There are degrees of happiness, Chairman. I don't terribly want to change the one that I'm in at the moment for any sort of super type that would go with 8. I'm as happy as Larry with 5. There was always the hope that one day what we were doing would get itself consummated by a real genuine order, and that somebody would buy the aeroplanes and that somebody would go and operate them, because it's tremendous fun making aeroplanes to use yourself, but it's not very profitable.
Today, at BAC's Filton factory, the Concordes that will eventually fly for BOAC are being built. Tomorrow, the battle to sell more, many more, begins in earnest. The man in charge of BAC's sales team is Pat Burgess, busy checking the answers to questions he'll be asked by would-be customers on the other side of the world.
Done in the sub-assemblies before they arrive here.
Correct, yes, which reduces the workload here.
The problems of building Concorde have been overcome. The problems of selling it remain, because the idea of a supersonic passenger plane is something entirely new. The airlines are asking, can we afford it? Can we operate it at a profit? Will it fly the Atlantic fully loaded? What about smoke pollution? What about the noise Concorde makes on takeoff? What about the sonic boom? These are the questions that Pat Burgess has lived with for the past 10 years.
Pollution? Pollution, both low level and high level.
Yeah.
The noise issues?
And the noise issues. Now, the next item.
Sonic boom.
Sonic boom.
Which is...
Well, there's one thing for certain, we can't cure it. The boom is really very like distant thunder, and there's nothing like the sharp crack that it is underneath the flight path.
If that's our 50-mile span, the real highly intensive boom is over about 50% of what we were previously expecting.
So the boom width could only perhaps be 20 miles in reality in terms of real annoyance, and this could affect, of course, the routings of the aeroplane.
The British and French governments decided to build Concorde. Taxpayers have paid for it. Ministers have fixed its selling price. But in the end, the project's success rests on the salesman. Is Pat Burgess aware of the responsibility his salesmen carry?
In a way, yes, I suppose so. But one must never sit down, really, and start taking the whole weight of the world on one's shoulders and saying, God, 50,000 people's jobs depend on me, because I'm pretty sure you'd go crazy fairly quickly if you did. So the only thing to do is to keep on something you genuinely believe, and I genuinely believe that this product is right. I believe the aeroplane is right, and I believe it's right for Britain at large.
There have been doubts about the future of Concorde. How has this affected you?
Never had any doubts at all, not one. I've had a simple, childlike faith that it would always go.
That everything would turn out all right?
Everything would turn out all right on the day, and I'm still convinced of that. And I'm still convinced that the aeroplane itself will be a boon to mankind.
How many Concordes are you going to sell?
You're asking me as a salesman how many I'm going to sell, or how many we are going to sell jointly. At least 200. That has been our analysis. We've repeated our market analysis now something like 3 times in detail over the last 8 years, and we have not changed our assessment of the market to below 200 in any of those analyses.
You said 400 in 1966.
The maximum market, I said, I think, to be precise, was going to be in excess of 380. I can still see a maximum market of that order, certainly.
How many options have you placed at the moment?
We have 74.
How many new options have you had in the last 2.5 years?
Absolutely none.
Does that worry you?
No, not in the slightest. The 74 option holders that we have were really defending a competitive situation in taking out the options. They don't represent their full needs for airplanes. By, say, 1980, if one is looking at a production line running for 5 years, certainly we would expect to sell to those airlines significantly more than 74.
Najib Halaby is a director of Pan American. What does he think of Concorde?
Fortunately, at the moment, it appears as though Concorde will be like a number of airplanes. Ill-timed, ill-sized, uneconomic, not hitting the market, the traveling public, at the right moment with the right product. Comet, Constellation, Convair 880, Caravelle even, missed the marketing moment. I'm afraid that's the story on Concorde.
But how many airlines share Mr. Halaby's views? This week, talked to all the 16 airlines who hold options on Concorde. So far, only one, BOAC, have signed a contract to buy. BOAC have 8 options, they're signing contracts for 5. 3 other airlines, Air France with 8 options, Qantas with 4, and Air India with 3, had no comment to make on their intentions to turn their options into firm orders. Braniff and Japan Airlines were enthusiastic about Concorde, JAL particularly so. When I say the word Concorde to you, what does it conjure up in your mind?
Speed. Speed and the accompanying saving of time, which time is of very great value to the businessman, I think.
Can you sell speed?
Oh, sure, certainly.
Pan American with 8 options, Continental with 3, Sabena with 2, and Middle East Airlines declared they were still waiting to be convinced that they needed Concorde. So too are Air Canada. The makers, of course, say, speed sells, speed always sells.
Yeah, that's their argument. They say speed always has sold. But what they do forget, and they may be right, but what they do forget in their argument is that it always sold because it was cheaper. You see, this is the first time, I think, in the history of aviation where you're giving the customer more speed at a higher price. Every time that there has been technological improvements before, the improvements brought about a reduction in price. So of course, the market base was broadened. But now, in effect, what you're doing, you're giving them more speed, but you're asking him to pay what, maybe 25, maybe 30% more than the first class fare. Now, I don't know how many people value their time that much.
But you've got options.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we're going to take them up.
TWA and Eastern said they were waiting for Concorde to go into service before making up their minds. United Airlines said they would buy only if supersonic travel became inevitable. American Airlines and Lufthansa said they were not even close to reaching a decision on whether or not to buy Concorde. We've talked to all the option holders in the list, and at least half of them seem to exhibit no great keenness today for turning those options into orders.
Naturally.
What do you mean?
2 basic reasons, I say naturally. First of all, I wouldn't expect anybody who was going to come to the negotiating table with my commercial director that was publicly on record saying this was the most wonderful thing that he'd ever seen in his life. So that's that side of it. And the other point, of course, is that a lot of these airlines have had a couple of disastrous years They've had a very large procurement program on wide-bodied aeroplanes, either 4-engine jets or 3-engine jets. And their stockholders are looking just a little bit querulously at the thought of another large investment in airplanes.
Financially, are the airlines of the world in any position to make a large investment in Concorde at the moment?
I don't think so. They're just absorbing their investment in 747, and now comes Lockheed 1011 TriStar, now comes Douglas DC-10, and people are still buying 707s and 737s and stretch 727s. So there's just a gorging of airplanes, and there's really no need at this time, from the airline's financial point of view, of another round of equipment purchases. I don't think there's a pressure from our passengers at this time to buy Concorde. I think airlines are meant to serve passengers and shippers, not governments or airline executives or engineers.
Or businessmen.
Or businessmen, or bankers, who own most of the airlines of the world. They're meant to serve passengers. What's best for the passenger is best for the airline. You shouldn't have manufacturers and governments forcing airplanes on airlines. It should be the other way around. There are 49 airlines flying across the Atlantic at this time. And of those 49, I don't know of a single one that can afford to buy Concorde at $60 million a copy.
In 1962, the estimated cost of developing the aircraft was around £170 million. The government said the figure was only a guess. It was a bad guess. Today, Concorde's research and development bill for the British and French governments stands at around £650 million. Another £350 million has already been earmarked for further development. Total cost, £1,000 million. Concorde is the most costly technological project outside the American space program.
I don't think that anybody at the beginning really understood what they were taking on. I mean, quite clearly in terms of cost, they had no idea what it would mean to build a plane of this kind. I don't think they realized the technological problems that they would face in building a civil aircraft to go through the sound barrier. I don't think they recognized that a project which was really undertaken for basically for political reasons would have all these implications. We've learned a lot from this. There never will be another Concorde project of the same kind.
What do you mean?
I think what Parliament will say is that a project of this kind, which has absorbed or already committed £500 million
of the British taxpayers'
British taxpayers' money, half the total, give or take a little, and which will certainly cost another 100 million to the British taxpayer in development. This is quite apart from the production costs. That a project of this kind needs much closer supervision by Parliament. This is money which could have been spent in other ways. Whether it should have been is a different matter, and Parliament should have kept a very close watch on it.
Do you think that the British taxpayer has any chance at all of getting back any of the £500 million or so already spent on research and development?
None, I would think, and the net cost of the British taxpayer in the end will be not 500 million, but I should say about 700 million.
You, of course, were one of the ministers, first of all at the Board of Trade and later at the Treasury, who was party to the decision to go ahead with Concorde.
Indeed, I think my attitude was acquiescence, that the project was making progress, it was employing a great number of men, it did reveal British skills at their best, and I think there was a sense in which one said, well, let it go on for the moment. Now, if we have a very difficult financial crisis to face, or the country gets into difficulties, well then look at it again. It could go as part of a package. But you can't cancel it blandly for no special reason, except it's costing a great deal more than you expected.
Do you think that successive governments have looked realistically enough at the huge amounts of money which have been going into the Concorde program?
But I think there's been a lack of willingness to face perhaps the unpopularity as governments have seen it, have cancelled Concorde. And the options have never been looked at. People have not generally said, if we save this money on Concorde, how else can we spend it? If this sort of discussion had taken place more frequently, well, maybe it wouldn't have got this far.
What are we buying for £1 million a week?
You're buying an airplane which I believe is eminently saleable in overseas markets, so you're buying a very positive, real return in terms of foreign payments, the balance of payments situation. You're buying your way into new technology. You're buying, although it's hard to define it, a quite indefinable spin-off from that technology. You're buying jobs in the shape of something like 25,000 in Britain alone. And in my view, you're buying long-term world leadership in aviation for Europe.
And yet if this large investment over this period of time on Concorde hadn't taken place, we could have had perhaps 1,000 schools.
You're saying schools are £500,000 each. I have no way of knowing what the number is.
See, that's the equation, isn't it? Isn't that one of the equations that one has to think in terms of?
It's one of the equations, but I'm really being put in a position that a governmental minister should be put in by that particular question. They're the people who allocate priorities. All I can do is look at the project and look at it as an investment made by the British taxpayer and look at it in purely commercial terms.
But you're a taxpayer too. I know it's your job,
yes.
But I mean, looking at it in these terms, either one or the other, do you ever have any doubts?
No, not really.
Have you ever looked at it in those terms?
No, I hadn't, frankly. I'd always looked at it as being a right and proper national investment, which was going to do just as much for the long-term future of Britain, both economically and technologically, as other investments would do, and in fact a downside better investment than many.
But for the taxpayer, how good an investment is Concorde? This week reckons that the British and French will have to sell 150 Concordes before production costs alone break even. That's at a selling price of £18 million for each plane. This is ignoring the £1,000 million spent on research and development. But what if fewer than 150 are sold? What if it's only 50, which could happen if some of the option holders don't buy? This week reckons that if only 50 are sold, the loss on producing Concorde, over and above the research and development bill, will be £5 million for each one sold. A £5 million loss on each of the first 50 aircraft. But obviously the number that you sell is quite crucial. If you do sell only 50, and that there is this sort of loss on a production line totaling only 50, this is obviously an extremely serious situation.
Only selling 50 airplanes would be a serious situation. Of course it would. But we can't get the market that low. We just can't, by any means of calculation, we just can't get the market down to below the 200 mark I've already talked to you about. And on the reverse side of the coin to the one you're putting, every airplane we manufacture above 150, there is a massive return.
Fact is that tomorrow BAC are setting out to try to sell Concorde. What chance do you think that they have of reaching 150 or 170?
Very little, in my opinion. I'm not speaking for anyone but myself out of my last decade of experience in this. I just don't think the marketing can be done to sell that many airplanes.
Do you think that we are going to sell 150 or 170 Concordes?
It seems to me extremely unlikely. I would think that we might sell 50 or 60. I don't know, and that will be over a period of time.
It's not an economic airplane. It's not a comfortable airplane. It will be quite a cozy airplane. You'll go back from the commodious salon of the 747 Jumbo to a Convair constraint. It will not be attractive to the passenger after he's seen the steamship-like comfort of the big plane. It does make a hell of a racket on the airport and in the boom, and that's not going to seem like progress to the peoples of the world. I would like to see it limited to a service test aircraft, about a dozen built. Yes, that would disemploy some production workers for a while. Yes, that would cost more money. But in the end, there would be a greater return on the investment to Britain and France if they stopped it at about a dozen, completed the test, and then went on with Super Concorde. I think there's a market for maybe 300 or 400 of Super Concorde.
But Concorde has already cost well over £1,000 million to develop. Are you suggesting that we should spend more money on it?
The money the British and French have spent on Concorde is an investment in technology. It's an investment in hydraulics, in metallurgy, in thermodynamics, in electronics, the whole range of things. They've done a magnificent technological tour de force. But that isn't the purpose of an air transport. It's to carry people safely, swiftly, economically. And if it's necessary to build Super Concorde, then let's get on with that.
I think the danger then, of course, will be the argument that if it was a slightly different aircraft, we could sell 150 or 170 million. 150 or 170, and the argument then will be, well, let's spend another £200 million stretching the plane in order to make up the losses which otherwise we will incur.
And
it will go on that way.
a bigger bill.
A bigger bill, indeed.